Welcome to Wandering Jews at J Squared Adventures. Travel far enough and you meet yourself.
We're your hosts. I'm Scott.
I'm Sorrel.
When we teach Jewish history, and even in the context of the podcast a lot of times, I think we frame Jewish history through the lens of intellectual giants, the great scholars, Akiva and Maimonides, etc. And while these teachers, who were themselves quite revolutionary in a lot of ways and undeniably shaped Jewish tradition for centuries, the Jewish experience is so much more than philosophy, learning, and influential books.
100%. And when we think about the Jewish experience, what comes to mind, unfortunately, but also realistically, is persecution, the difficult times, the dark periods of oppression, the recurring waves of anti-Semitism, isolation, and extreme violence. For people often without a homeland or political power, these struggles are definitely an undeniable part of our overall story. But these two perspectives don't tell the whole story, do they?
So in order to tell the whole story, or at least to add another piece to it, this week on Wandering Jews, we're heading to the Mediterranean, what Jewish sources called the Great Sea, to explore a different side of the Jewish experience. We'll be talking about the Jewish sailors, pirates, and navigators who dared to venture into the open waters in simple boats with limited technology, adding a fascinating and often forgotten dimension to our history of Jewish travel and life.
Tracing the origins of the Jewish story, our people are rooted in the desert, some mountains, right? Probably you're not going to think of sea or seafaring as the first popular association with Jews and Judaism. It's probably not the first thing that comes to mind. While pivotal moments certainly involve crossing rivers, we have, Abram and Sarah, biblical times in Mesopotamia, Moses and the liberated slaves at the Nile and the Red Sea. And then we've got Joshua and the tribes at the Jordan, and Psalm 137 poignantly recalling exile by the rivers of Babylon. I feel a song coming on. The sea held a different significance in the biblical imagination.
Yeah, the sea was a lot of times portrayed as this almost like a monster.
Menacing.
And a home to these incredible primordial creatures, Tanin and Leviathan. Mm-hmm. These were symbols of chaos. They're mentioned in Psalms and the prophets, Isaiah, Job. It's almost like a Japanese kaiju of the Godzilla verse. These ancient Israelite sea creatures represented an untamed world beyond the familiar safety of land. When we view pre-modern maps of the world, complete with illuminated ocean dragons and sea monsters, we're looking at a really deep-rooted fear of the sea, of the unknown, the uncharted, and that fear, that sense, that drama was already captured in the poetry of the Hebrew Bible and passed down through the ages. Yet, even in ancient Israel, seafaring, I should say, Jewish seafaring emerged.
Right. Remarkably, the tribe of Zevulun received a dual prophecy of maritime prosperity from both Jacob and Moses. Jacob foretold Zevulun will live by the seashore and become a haven for ships. His border will extend towards Sidon. That was in Genesis 49:13. Moses echoed this, saying of Zevulun, "Rejoice, for they draw from the abundance of the seas and the hidden treasures of the sand," in Deuteronomy. The tribe of Zevulun are promised, both by Jacob and by Moses, that they will live and thrive through their connection to the sea.
Don't forget, you mentioned Sidon now. They lived alongside the seafaring Phoenicians of present-day Lebanon. Definitely ancient Israel interacted with this maritime culture and sea power. The relationship likely involved collaboration, trade routes, also competition for control of those routes, technologies, looking for skilled sailors, bring the staff on, all throughout this area of the Eastern Mediterranean. But together they reached distant shores, places like Crete and Cyprus, North Africa. They sailed to Italy, even Iberia, today Spain and Portugal. Like in so many aspects of life, also in ancient Israel's maritime pursuits, Israel was never a nation that dwells alone.
So to continue along the lines of this positive portrait that we're painting of Jewish seafaring, the ambition of King Solomon, son of David, extended to the seas too. He built a fleet at Etzion Gaber, which is modern Eilat, And in alliance with the Phoenicians, his royal ships sailed to East Africa, bringing back treasures such as gold, silver, ivory, and exotic animals, as is mentioned in Melachim in Kings.
And if we add a tangible link to this maritime past, the renowned archaeologist, Professor Nachman Avigad, revealed an 8th century Judean seal. Its engraving has a ship alongside the name Oniyahu, maybe meaning my ship is the Lord. And it strongly suggests, again, this ancient Jewish connection to the sea and seafaring and sailing.
Oniyot is ships in Hebrew, right?
Oniyot is ships, right? Very good, very good. My ship is the Lord. So the background of the seal, the 8th century, it was really a pivotal time because it witnessed the birth of Rome, the first Olympics, the expansion of the Assyrian Empire, culminating in the conquest of the Kingdom of Israel. In 1985, the State of Israel issued a commemorative coin to honor the Oniyahu seal, and in the official announcement of the state mint writes, quote, "When the glorious age of King Solomon came to an end, the kingdom was divided. Ships built by the king Jehoshaphat were smashed down even before they sailed, and the people of Israel were exiled. Upon return from exile 2 millennia later, our ancient maritime tradition was well revived. Today, Israel has an excellent modern navy and merchant fleet. Oniyahu's seal is no longer just a reminder of a glorious past, but a symbol of rebirth and renewal."
Absolutely. And we see that today, alive in the adventurous spirit that continues in the Israeli Navy. Brave men and women who watch over our coastlines with the same kind of courage and fortitude our old seafarers had. Then we have the Marine Archaeology Unit that dives into the depths to uncover pieces of our history that connects us even more to the sea. And of course, the Sea Scouts are out there as well, inspiring kids, teens to learn how to navigate, lead, and love the water, just like the generations that preceded them. It's amazing to see how this deep historic connection to the sea is so very alive in Israel today.
And that hooks us back to those ancient references that we've been talking about. If we go to the Second Temple period, the Second Commonwealth, that period that's basically the return from the Babylonian exile up until the time of the Roman destruction of Jerusalem. So the Mediterranean coastline, it was flourishing, it was bustling with all kinds of international ports. And just in the land of Israel, think about Gaza, think about Jaffa, think about Akko, just to name a few. Places where Jews and non-Jews interacted, went to the sea, trading, sailing, fishing, and this was very much part of the story of the region. If you visited Herod's capital at Caesarea and gazed out at the blue-green Mediterranean, you're also likely struck by that profound and ongoing sense of the relationship between the ancient Jewish people and the so-called Great Sea.
And the Hasmonean tomb, the tomb of Jason, discovered in landlocked Jerusalem in the Rehavia neighborhood, interestingly, in 1956, contains an inscribed drawing of 3 Greek-style ships. Does the tomb of Jason link Jason and his family to the thriving import-export business that linked the lands of Israel with the rest of the Eastern Mediterranean? Intriguingly, Josephus, a complex figure who served as a rebel, is remembered as a turncoat and remains our most significant, if albeit not objective, historian of ancient Jewish life in the land of Israel. He recounts Jewish sea brigands engaging in acts of piracy against Roman shipping during the Great Revolt, a maritime form of guerrilla resistance. I quote, "They also built themselves a great many pirate ships and turned pirates upon the seas near to Syria and Phoenicia and Egypt and made those seas unnavigable to all men."
And if we start to shift our focus from ancient times from the coastal history of ancient Israel to the rest of the Mediterranean, and we move into medieval and even early modern times, so the historical connections between the Jewish people and the sea persisted, among other things through the involvement of Jews with some of Europe's most significant naval empires.
The harsh reality of the expulsions of Jews from Spain and Portugal, to put it quite mildly, in the late 15th and early 16th century, that resulted, going back to what we were saying, that, how we're usually marked and we identify with our persecution, it resulted in another massive wave of Jewish refugees. So faced with the restricted opportunities and numerous hardships, and potentially motivated by a desire for reprisal against the Spanish and Portuguese, a segment of these individuals turned to piracy, becoming skilled maritime mercenaries who offered their considerable abilities to the highest bidder. That's what survival looked like.
In the larger context, again, let's remember the background of the Spanish Inquisition and the exile from Spain in 1492, when groups have the privilege of visiting the absolutely magnificent Alhambra Palace in Granada, and they're standing in the throne room of King Ferdinand of Queen Isabella, the rulers of Spain who completed the Catholic conquest of what had been Muslim Spain. They issued the Alhambra Decree. The Alhambra Decree, in that very throne room, 1492, all Jews were ordered to leave Spain, a place they had called home for centuries. It's estimated that as many as 300,000 Jews were exiled and sought new homes in Portugal, in North Africa, in the Ottoman Empire, and even in the Netherlands.
The Ottoman Empire, major Spanish rival, understood the strategic and economic potential that Jews could bring to the empire, right? Sultan Suleiman the Magnificent, reigning between 1520 to 1566, oversaw the building of the walls of Jerusalem city as we see them today. He saw in the exiled Jews a weapon. He could weaponize the Jews against Spain and use them for his empire-building aspirations.
Fleeing the horrors of the Spanish Inquisition and born to a Jewish refugee family living in Smyrna, Turkey, they were Sephardic Jews, and among their children, Sinan Reis. And Sinan Reis, from being the child of refugees, people without a home, he rose to become a very formidable pirate captain, carving out a powerful presence all across the Mediterranean. You can imagine this boy growing up on tales of the atrocities committed against the Jewish people by the Spanish, and young Sinan Reis joined the Barbary Corsairs, Muslim pirates who attacked Christian-owned ships. As a vital ally of Hareddin Barbarossa, the Grand Admiral of the Ottoman Empire, Sinan the Jew, as he was remembered, was an outstanding sailor and an unusually sharp strategic mind.
Yeah, when the Spanish forces defeated the Ottomans at Tunis in 1535, a story about Sinan actually reveals perhaps something of the Jewish heart of this amazing pirate commander. Tunis was facing certain collapse, and Charles V, the Holy Roman Emperor and King of Spain, was about to taste victory. But an enraged Barbarossa decided to murder the 20,000 Christian slaves imprisoned in Tunis dungeons. Sinan managed to actually dissuade Barbarossa from doing so, telling him, quote, "To stain ourselves with so awful a massacre would place us outside the pale of humanity forever." So he was holding on, despite the persecution that he himself had witnessed, holding on to integrity.
In another battle, very important, 1538, the Battle of Preveza, Sinan Reis played also a decisive role, denying Christian forces control of the city of Actium and securing a resounding Ottoman triumph that safeguarded the Sultan's Greek holdings. His unwavering loyalty and exceptional skill not only earned him Barbarossa's trust, but ultimately led to his remarkable ascension as Vice Admiral of the entire Ottoman Navy. A striking testament to the opportunities available even then to those fleeing persecution in the 16th century Ottoman realm.
Let's move away from Turkey for a moment and move to Portugal. Abram Zacuto, a brilliant Jewish scholar, was a pivotal figure in the Age of Discovery. His expertise in astronomy and mathematics guiding the era's daring voyages. Born in Salamanca, Spain, his rigorous Jewish education and exceptional intellects propelled him to take on a professorship at the University of Salamanca. However, the 1492 Alhambra Decree forced him, like countless others, into exile, forever connecting his Jewish identity with his extraordinary contributions.
Zacuto found refuge in Portugal and his renown earned him the crucial role of royal astronomer under King John II. Recognizing the urgent need for better navigation in the growing age of Portuguese exploration, he dedicated himself to refining maritime tools and astronomical knowledge. His masterpiece, the Eternal Almanac, the Almanach Perpetuum, published in Latin in 1496, revolutionized seafaring. These unprecedented, accurate astronomical tables, they provided solar data. They enabled sailors to determine latitude with greater precision. This indispensable tool replaced guesswork with calculation, directly empowering navigators like Christopher Columbus, who reportedly used Zacuto's lunar eclipse predictions, and Vasco da Gama, who consulted with Zacuto before his landmark 1497 voyage to India, even employing Zacuto's own instruments.
Unfortunately, though, despite his profound impacts on Portugal's maritime success, the exile of 1496 and the forced conversions of 1497 forced Zacuto to flee once more, eventually finding peace in Tunis and Jerusalem. His life stands as a powerful testament to the fusion of Jewish intellectual tradition and groundbreaking scientific advancement during a really transformative and incredibly challenging period. Abram Zacuto, unwavering in his Jewish faith despite ongoing persecution, left an indelible mark on history. His astronomical tables and refined navigational tools, they weren't just merely academic achievements. They were literally the keys that unlocked new worlds, reshaping global trade and the very map of our planet.
So we've been in the Ottoman Empire.
Yes.
We've been in the land of Israel.
We've done a lot of traveling today.
We've done a lot of traveling, and we're going to continue Italy and return to Spain and even go across the Atlantic, because we could not have this discussion without mentioning Cristobal Colón Columbus, one of history's most lauded and vilified figures. Columbus's impact in expanding European influence and colonial rule around the vast Atlantic, indisputable. The question is asked, was Columbus a Jew?
And like most stories, it's long and complicated. Some have claimed that Columbus was not of Italian descent, but rather of Spanish heritage. This claim remains alive even today. In fact, as recently as October 2024, a Spanish television documentary, Columbus DNA, His True Origin, broadcast on Spain's RTVE, ignited renewed debate by claiming, based on DNA analysis, that Christopher Columbus was of Sephardic Jewish descent and likely originated, as we said, from Spain rather than Italy. The documentary presented findings from a 22-year study spearheaded by forensic expert José Antonio Lorente of the University of Granada. Their central assertion is that DNA extracted from remains believed to be those of Columbus and his son Hernando Colón reveals genetic markers consistent with a Jewish ancestry. Furthermore, the program suggested Columbus may have concealed his heritage, shocking, to evade the brutal persecution of the Spanish Inquisition, culminating in the 1492 Alhambra Decree.
When you take a look at these claims, and again, it's amazing that this debate is still going on, they're very dramatic, but they have been met with a lot of skepticism from many historians and geneticists. Some of the concerns around the claims made by, for example, this Spanish documentary, well, there's a lack of peer-reviewed publication about their research. The DNA evidence, it's very piecemeal. It's very degraded. The whole question of what are genetic markers and their connections with cultural identity? Very hard with even a lot of good evidence to pin that down, particularly in the area of the Mediterranean, where so many peoples have interacted with each other for such incredibly long periods of time. Bottom line, the prevailing historical consensus, supported by substantial documentation, places Columbus's origins, wait for it, in Genoa, Italy, and identifies him as a Catholic.
Right. So while the Spanish television program definitely reignites a fascinating historical mystery, the assertion that DNA evidence definitively proves Columbus's Jewish identity is highly contested. and lacks broad acceptance within the scientific and historical communities. More robust scientific validation analysis are necessary before any such claims can be considered conclusive. But back in 1992, when the question of Columbus' role in the European settlement and colonialization of what became known as the Americas, and in the African slave trade supported by Europe and the United States at least until the mid-19th century, was less contentious in the public discourse, and the Western world was marking 500 years since Columbus' fleet sailed from Spain across the Atlantic. Professor Jonathan Sarna addressed this very question of Columbus' alleged Jewish ancestry.
And Professor Sarna, his reputation goes before him, distinguished American Jewish historian, specializing, and one could even say one of the key leaders of the development of American Jewish history, prolific scholar, influential role in shaping the field, and currently serves at Brandeis University as professor of American Jewish history. In a fascinating article in Commentary Magazine during that time of 1992, 500 years since the expulsion and Columbus sailing the ocean blue, Professor Sarna explores the framing of Columbus as an American national hero as waves of immigration arrived in America in the late 19th and early century. In this context, Italian Americans, they championed Columbus as, quote, soul of their soul and flesh of their flesh, as a true American hero. Through Columbus and the creation of Columbus Day, Italian Americans hoped to really secure their place in American life and their identities as so-called true Americans.
And just like the Italian Americans, the Jews also at this time were searching for their own inroads to be accepted as true Americans. It was against this background that Jewish writers praised Columbus and offered that even in America's earliest days, 2 Jews had accompanied Columbus as crew members on his fateful voyage. And this article is a good read. And Sarna, that you're about to share, Scott, Sarna answers the question, Columbus, was he or wasn't he a Jew? In resounding fashion.
So Sarna writes, so hold on to your chairs. The tone here, I think, is interesting because he kind of departs a little bit from kind of academic stoicism. And he says, quote, who cares? There is, however, he continues, at least one good reason to care about the century-long obsession with Columbus's putative Jewish past and his alleged Jewish associations. And that's for whatever clues it may provide to the way that American Jews think about themselves. For it's a remarkable fact that among America's ethnic and religious groups, only one, the Jews, has linked itself to so many of America's founding myths. Sarna continues, these myths include the Indians as the lost 10 tribes, the Puritans as Hebraic to their core. Columbus was aided by Jews, and maybe even was one himself. These have precious little to do with the real history and significance of the Indians, or the Puritans, or Columbus, and Sarna suggests, but they do speak volumes about American Jews, their loyalties, and their insecurities. And I'll reference the article in our more to read, Sarna, Columbus and the Jews, commentary, November 1992.
So today in our travels from ancient Israel across the Mediterranean and to the other side of the Atlantic Ocean, we've mentioned Jerusalem, Caesarea, Ottoman, Smyrna, Tunis, Granada, Portugal, and we even arrived in modern America. Jews on the water, whether they be pirates or privateers, map makers, navigators, traders, refugees, and immigrants, they've really left an imprint, a mark on how we perceive Jews in their role as seafarers. The roots of Jewish history are many, and discover them as you travel with J-Squared Adventures, and together as we discover the buried treasures of our people's stories all around the world. So travel always has the potential to challenge assumptions about our story and offer sometimes surprising corners where we not only get to encounter others, but also ourselves. And
now, something for the road. A tip, a recommendation, to help you make every journey your own.
Hello, friends. My name is Leo Ochberg. I'm a tour expert and a tour educator with J Square. And I would like to give you a window into a world which it's a musical word, a word of music named Fado, the Fado music. And I would like to connect it to the topic of the episode today that was talking about the Jewish journeys and the connection of the Jewish figures and people to the ocean and to the age of discoveries. And that great achievement comes with also a great, in time, great pain or a great challenge. And I would like to share that through music. The name of the music is Fado. The Fado music, the word Fado comes from the word fate. It's originated in the Latin word fatum, which means, again, destiny. That's the meaning of the word. And Fado takes us back to the times where Portugal was a great empire that was exploring or controlling very big part of the world and embarking on a journey. You can imagine yourself. I want to take you to a moment, to an image or an idea. Imagine yourself a woman standing on a pier, wearing black, looking to the ocean. There is a man on a boat, her man, leaving her, and he's getting further and further away until she cannot really see him. What she really hopes is to see her man that at the moment is embarking on a journey to discover the world, coming back, and she just want to imagine the moment that she's going to hug him back again. But behind her, there are women which are more experienced in a way, older women, and there are kind of whispering in the background, he's never going to come back. He's never going to come back. That moment of understanding that the chance that her man is going to return from that journey on the way to Africa or on the way to America to discover the world, the idea that there are very big chances that he's not going to return back to Portugal, to this safe land, was embedded or was integrated into the music and the soul that came from the women that at that moment of agony. The Fado music, the music of destiny, is the national soul of Portugal. You cannot understand Portugal without going and listening to a Fado concert. And as we say that, I would like to take you into the motive in the Fado music called Saudade. Saudade is like saying in Hebrew, chutzpah. When I say chutzpah, do I need to explain that word? I cannot really explain it because it doesn't really have one meaning. It has more of an emotion to it. And Saudade means longing, to miss someone. It can be missing someone, it can be missing a moment, or missing a period of time. Now, I don't know how much we know about Portugal today, but Portugal today considered to be a kind of a small-sized country, not with like a very big economy or a thriving economy. And in the back of their minds, of the Portuguese people, they have that moment, that golden era when they used to be a maritime empire that controlled large part of the world. And that's also something that comes in the Fado music, that longing to something that was greater, bigger, different than what it is today. So when we're talking about Fado, we need to, for a moment, get off a plane. We are right now in Lisbon. Lisbon is situated on a large river called the Tajo River, and the mouth of the river is overlooking the Atlantic Ocean. And right there, at that point where the women used to stand, this is where Fado music was born. There is a small neighborhood. When you're going to come to Lisbon and travel, hopefully with J Square, you're going to be traveling through a neighborhood or walking through a neighborhood named Alfama. Alfama, it's the birthplace. It's the cradle of the Fado music. And this is where, when you walk around on the streets, you don't need a guide, but a guide can get you into one of those small bars where the music was born. And if you want to compare it, it's the Fado for the Portuguese is like the blues for the American people. It's like the tango in Argentina. It's like flamenco in Spain, or if you want to take it into another place on the map, it's like the samba in Brazil. And Fado actually started in Lisbon, in Alfama, but since Portugal expanded into other parts of the world, parts of the music in Fado came from the Brazilian rhythm. Some of parts of the Fado music come from actually Africa, because Portugal controlled parts of Africa for a while. So you can hear that African beat into it. Some of the music actually came from the Moorish, which is the Arabic music, which is a combination that through the music you can understand the history of the place. And when you are sitting in one of those small bars and you hear a concert, concert sounds like a big a venue, but it's actually a very small bar, usually dark, one small stage, two guitars, one 6 strings guitar, what's known as the classic guitar, and the other guitar is the 12 strings guitar, known as the Portuguese guitar. And there is usually a woman singer. There are also men, but usually women. And they start with those two guitars to share the music in a very, sometimes lively, happy beat, and sometimes very low, slow, and deep emotions. And it's kind of going in between. You can imagine yourself sitting in that bar, two guitars, one voice, one glass of port wine, maybe some snacks. Sometimes they also provide a little bit of food, and then going into that world in time and moment in time that will carry you into the history and the story of Portugal. I'm going to attach to the links when you hear the podcast, press on one of the links attached, because we're going to provide you a playlist of some of the most famous singers of the Fado music. The queen of Fado, she's maybe the most famous one, Amália Rodrigues. Amália Rodrigues was born in Lisbon in the 1920s, and she took Fado to the international stage and made it one of the most famous genres in the world. She's considered to be the classic singer. A newer singer that perform even today, and you can still attend their concerts, and she's amazing. Her name is Maritza or Marisa, depends how you pronounce it. And she, one of the most famous Fado singers today. And there is many other singers on that playlist. So I want to welcome you to sit in your home, maybe even on your porch, pour yourself a glass of wine, maybe even port wine, play the playlist of the Fado music, and dive into a world that will be opening you to the history and the life of the Portuguese soul. I hope we're going to see you on our journeys. I hope you're going to join us. And thank you very much for listening. Have a great, wonderful day.
Thanks for listening. Dive deeper into the world of travel on our J Squared Adventures website. That's j2adventures.com. And stay in the loop with our latest adventures on all our social media platforms, Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn, all under J2 Adventures. And if you enjoyed hanging out with us, don't forget to leave us a comment, review, and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. Until next time, travel safely and keep wondering. I'm Sorel.
I'm Scott.
See you soon with the Wandering Jews.